The previous lesson focused on the key features and key principles of democracy and the importance of these key principles in essentially ensuring that democracy can operate smoothly and within the political system that we live. This lesson is going to start talking about the various different types of democracy that can exist within a political system, beginning first with the purest and most direct form of democracy, aptly titled direct democracy. This is the specification for the AQA A-level politics on the subject of democracy and participation. And fundamentally then, the first question that we're going to ask is, what actually is direct democracy, and then how does direct democracy work, before focusing on the advantages and disadvantages of this particular political system. Direct democracy is a form of government. It's a type of democracy in which the citizens of a particular political society have not only got to have a say in the ways in which government is represented, but instead have a direct and active participation in the decision-making processes of the state. We can contrast this with the idea of representative democracy. Representative democracy is akin to the system that we have currently in the United Kingdom, where you go to the ballot box on election day and you vote for a particular representative, these being an MP, a member of parliament. That MP then goes to parliament and votes and does political decision making as a representative of you. They represent you in government. Elected officials make decisions on behalf of the people. By contrast, direct democracy allows citizens to vote on laws, on policies, and other important issues directly. So rather than there being a system of representatives and members of parliament that vote on laws, you just vote on laws yourself directly and get involved in that kind of direct system of democratic participation. In direct democracy systems, citizens are, like I said, directly involved in the legislative as well as in the policy-making processes. This would be obviously the executive branch. They don't rely on intermediaries, they don't rely on representatives, and they don't have representatives that make decisions for them. The participation could be done through a variety of different means. In a hypothetical situation, direct democracy could literally be as direct as every time a law is created, the people have a say. Everybody gets to go and vote on that particular law. However, direct democracy can exist in a variety of different forms. One such example is in the use of referendums. Referendums are votes on particular political questions. The previous referendum in this country, in the United Kingdom, the last one took place in 2016, which was a referendum on membership to the European Union, the famous Brexit referendum. They can also exist in other forms, such as in initiatives and recalls, as well as other mechanisms that allow for the direct input of individuals on specific issues. Citizens are able, therefore, to make and amend new laws and propose new laws, make new amendments to existing laws, and do all of this through referenda, initiatives, recalls, or any other mechanism. They could be direct or indirect in terms of their participation. So, for example, in a direct initiative, if enough signatures are collected, then the proposal is put directly to a vote by the electorate. That is what is known as a direct initiative. And there are some situations and some systems in the world that operate on the basis of this direct initiative system. An indirect initiative is where a proposal is first submitted by and to the legislature, the lawmaking authority. If the legislature rejects it or takes no action, then it is put to a vote by the electorate. Another example of direct democracy can be in town hall meetings. Town hall meetings, some of which still exist, for example in New England, are meetings that serve as a form of direct democracy, where local residents are able to gather to discuss and to vote on community issues, to vote on budgets, to vote on policies, to vote on essentially the future direction of a particular area. Direct democracy has a number of important advantages, the first of which is of course this idea of political participation. It fosters the highest level of political engagement among its citizens that could be had when it comes to different forms of democracy, because what it does is it requires that individual citizens get directly involved in how the government works and what laws are passed in the government institutions. It ensures that accountability is shared among everybody. It is made directly by the people. A decision is made directly by the people, and the result of that is, of course, that there is greater accountability. The accountability then rests on the hands of the people who are making these votes, who are doing these votes, the citizens. Citizens have the power to make and change laws. This reduces, in fact, the risk of corruption. It reduces the risk of misrepresentation by elected officials. It reduces the need for there to be a mandate on the part of elected representatives. The final main advantage is, of course, this idea of the people's will. Direct democracy ensures that laws and policies directly reflect the will of the people. It couldn't reflect more of the will of the people than a direct democracy could. With a representative democracy, you have the will of the people being represented, but it might not directly reflect the will of the people. In a direct democracy, it necessarily reflects the will of the people because it's the will of the people that is making these decisions. Just like with every form of democracy, a direct democracy also has its disadvantages. Of course, there are practical challenges to direct democracy. In a large, complex society like the United Kingdom, it would be impossible to operate a direct democracy where every single citizen is invited to vote on every single law and every single policy. How is this going to actually take place, especially given that every single person has lives, and they also would have to be continually informed in the participation of every single political issue. Essentially then, voting would take up everybody's lives, and as a result of which, nobody would get anything done if direct democracy was instigated in the UK. A sort of extension to that challenge is this idea of it being inefficient. Decision-making processes in direct democracy will be slower. It'd be less efficient due to the widespread need for political participation and consensus. Whereas in Parliament, you can just vote and they can have votes every single day on particular political and legal issues. In a direct democracy, everyone would have to go out to the ballot box almost every day in order to allow for law to be passed, and people would have to vote, and people would have to count and tally each of these votes for a very long time on every single piece of legislation. Fundamentally, Parliament churns out thousands of pieces of legislation each and every single year and each and every single decade. So it would take a lot of work and a lot of effort to include every single person in the country in that decision-making process. You also have the theoretical challenge, the idea of a tyranny of the majority. There'll be a risk that direct democracy may lead to this tyranny of the majority, where even though people have an individual say, the rights and interests of the minority groups are overlooked or even sometimes undermined. And this is really where the idea of human rights is so important, and why the idea of entrenching human rights is so important as well. So that really does it for the advantages and disadvantages of direct democracy. The next lesson is going to look at an example of direct democracy in the UK's political system, this of course being the use of referenda.